last night, the first thing that we do at funeral masses is an important moment where we declare Artur is risen. That is the good news of Jesus Christ. Only the body has died. The body was made by his parents, and what human beings make eventually dies. What God made at conception in his mother's womb, his soul cannot die. We are immortal beings. We are created in God's image. The soul has left the body. What God made, which is immortal, his soul, has left the body. And we call leaving the body risen, as we do every Easter. When we say Christ is risen, the Lord is risen, we are here to declare that Artur is risen. That is the good news of Jesus Christ. We rise from the dead. Paul writes in Corinthians, the one who raised Jesus from the dead, that is God the Holy Spirit, will also raise us to be with him, as I read in the gospel reading. He came, and now he is with the Lord. When our soul leaves the body, there is a judgment by Jesus Christ. As I mentioned yesterday, it is not well taught, but it is important on a day like this to remember. When you walk into the Catholic Church, typically the biggest thing in the church, as in this case, is the crucifix. Why the crucifix is so big and so prominent and so important to us is because it is our symbol of love. We are expected to imitate God, and in his love, he died on the cross for us. And if you were paying attention to the second reading, Romans 5:8, the line is a very famous one. God proves his love for us. That word is important. God proves his love for us, in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. That's how we are expected to love, by, again, proving that we can love this way. We call it sacrificial and unconditional. And so the second reason, beyond celebrating his resurrection, that we have funeral masses is to reflect on how he proved, and again, it's an important word, how we prove in this life that we imitate his love. And so we look at things to see how he proved that. 58 years of marriage, close to 59 to Orgina, that is a major source of proof. Any of you that are married know it is not easy. Every day is not perfect. And yet that proof needs to be there, especially during times of argumentation. I'm sure they had some good old-fashioned arguments, as all married couples do. But the love continued. The argument is temporary, the marriage is permanent. That is part of how they prove wisdom to the next generation. The argument is temporary, the marriage is permanent. That requires wisdom. That requires God the Holy Spirit in marriage. That's impressive. And that's important that we teach this, because a lot of times people forget why it is that we forgive. Because he forgave from the cross. He said, "Forgive them, Father." Even those who crucified him were forgiven. So if he can forgive those who crucified him, we should be able to forgive the arguments that we have in our marriages. And that is proof. And again, proof is very important, because talk is cheap. Anybody can say, "I love you." What does it mean? You can say, "I love pizza, I love my pet, I love my job, I love my friends." Talk is cheap. It doesn't mean anything. It's in the proof that ultimately what indicates God the Holy Spirit is active in us, that it is real. It's shown by deeds, not by talk. Talk is cheap. This generation was very well known for proving their love. I mentioned immigration yesterday, something many of us born here, like me, take for granted. We should not. To come from a different country with a different language, with a different culture, and come here where it snows in November is a tough thing to do. And yet they came. Why? To make a better life for us, the next generation. And so I always like reminding Brandon and Andrew that if they are living these spoiled, rotten Canadian lives they are currently living, they have to be grateful to a generation that proved their love by coming here. And again, it's something that many of us take for granted. We should not. It was a great sacrifice to come here and leave what they knew for the unknown, and ultimately proved to us how much they loved us, that they would make a better life for us. We should not take that for granted. The other thing that is important with this generation, and I've already mentioned it, is their wisdom. They didn't have a lot of formal education. I'm easily over 2,000 funerals now, and most people whose funerals I celebrated, born around the time of our tour, barely had elementary school. They didn't have a lot of the knowledge that we have today with the internet and social media and the computers, but they had wisdom. Wisdom doesn't come from school. Knowledge comes from school. Unfortunately, in our culture, we've replaced wisdom with knowledge. We're super smart. Most people today are smart, but they're missing something. And when I test the kids in my elementary schools, they usually fail. Because I'll say to them, what's the main difference between you and your grandparents? And they don't usually give me the answer I'm looking for. Because, again, it's our fault. We've not taught the word, wisdom. That's the main difference. It's our fault. It's our generation that have forgotten what they valued so much, wisdom. They had the wisdom, and they proved that they had wisdom. It wasn't just a cute word. They proved it by how they bore fruit. If you remember your catechism, the fruits of the Holy Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Those are the fruits of the Holy Spirit. You may remember from your catechism days. Well, it's not just supposed to be a list that you memorize. It's supposed to be proof that you have God, the Holy Spirit in you activated. And this generation did that, especially in how they indicated joy. I mention this often at funerals because this generation was known for joy. They were known to be a joyful generation. They had all the reasons in the world to be miserable, but they didn't give in to it. It wasn't easy. He was born just before the end of the Second World War. Most nations were devastated. Most economies were devastated. They had a tough time. That's why they came to other countries, because it was a disaster there. And so they came here. And ultimately, notwithstanding, they had joy. I teach the children the cute little acronym JOY to teach them our definition of joy, because there's a world definition of joy and our definition of joy. And I use the acronym JOY, Jesus first, others second, yourself last. It's an important acronym because I meet a lot of miserable young people in my priesthood, a lot of miserable young people. And I know why they're miserable. They come to me and they tell me they're miserable. Well, I know why you're miserable, because you got the wrong stinking formula. You're putting the why first. You come first. And they've been convinced by the world that if they come first, they will know joy. Totally wrong, totally a lie. This generation understood that. That's why they never put themselves first. Jesus came first. The Our Father prayer was not a joke like it is today, because today the Our Father prayer is a joke. They'll say the words, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. They'll say the words, but there's no proof. Because when they have to make a decision, they don't consider God's will as a key variable in their decision-making process. Their will trumps God's will. They're selfish. They come first. And the result is that God's will isn't primary. And so the Our Father prayer is a joke. To them it was not. God's will was a key variable in how they made choices. When they had to make decisions, they considered what God wanted, not just what they wanted. They did not come first. That's how you know they didn't come first. Then the O, others second. I watched them over the years. They served. And if you were listening to the eulogy, he did that a lot. They understood service. They understood to serve others. But not like people serve today, because I watch how people serve today. They serve with this hand and calculate return on investment with this hand. What's in it for me? What about me? Is this going to make me feel good? What's in this for me? And then they serve. That's not serving. That's investing, because you want something back. They didn't do that. They served fully, with no calculation. They didn't use crazy language like today. I'll hear it all the time. My married couple, Father, this marriage is not fair. It's not 50-50. It's not equal. Well, it's not supposed to be 50-50. It's supposed to be 100 and 100. No calculation. If you give fully to the marriage, as they did, you don't have to calculate. You give all you have. And that's how you know you're serving properly. Today they calculate. It's always a calculation. It's always, what do I get out of this? That's not serving. That's investing. They had the wisdom to know that. And then finally, they didn't come first. They came last. And ultimately, their whole life proved that. And the result of that is that they knew joy. The joy of doing God's will, the joy of serving others, the joy of selflessness, not selfishness. Me, and I'll be happy. No, that's a bunch of crap. It's a lie. It doesn't work. It's not true. And they had the wisdom to know that. Today, wisdom is somewhat lacking, as everybody tries to win the argument. Watch how long you're married if you try to always win the argument and come first in the marriage. Watch how long the marriage lasts. Forget about 58 years. You'll be happy with 58 months. Again, it doesn't last because you always try to win. They understood the wisdom of that. They didn't try to win. They understood that. And that's all wisdom. All of this is wisdom. And ultimately, I would push this on to Brandon and Andrew because, again, in our culture, we never use the word. People hardly know what it means. A lot of times when I bring up the word in schools, the kids have to ask me, sorry, Father, what's that mean? What is wisdom? And I'll have to actually explain it to them. Well, all they have to do is look at their grandparents. Their grandparents had it in abundance. They saw the long-term vision of life, not the today. They understood one day this would happen, I'll be judged, and I need to get into heaven. The other way I describe it to the children in the schools is they saw with two sets of eyes, not only the eyes in their heads, the eyes of the world, but also their second set of eyes, the eyes of their soul. Very soon, those eyes will be tested. Your eyes will be tested. I'll take bread and wine from the back of the church, and on the altar of God, he promises in John chapter 6, now my flesh, now my blood. Eat my flesh. And ultimately, the bread and the wine become his body and blood. When I give him to you at communion time, it's still going to look like a cracker to the eyes of your head. That's the brilliance of the test. Can you go beyond the eyes of your head? Can you see his body? That's the test. Every Mass is a test. Can you see with those sets of eyes? Can you see beyond the eyes of your head, beyond the eyes of the world, beyond the eyes of the animal? Can you go beyond that? That is wisdom. And ultimately, this generation saw with both sets of eyes, not just on Sunday morning, not just at Mass, but then they brought this out into their world, into their lives, so that they could see with both sets of eyes, prioritize as God wanted them to. As the Bible describes, store up treasures in heaven, not treasures on earth. Treasures in heaven is what you give in this life. That's treasures in heaven. Treasures on earth is what you get in this life. And you're expected to give more than you get. It doesn't take a brain surgeon to figure out how this works. The body dies, the soul rises. Beside you, there are two piles. Treasures in heaven, treasures on earth. This pile has to be higher than this pile. If it is, you get into heaven. If not, So again, they had the wisdom to know that, and they lived this out, proved to God that they got it every day of their lives. So for that, Orgina, Duarte, and Marie, Brandon, Andrew, the rest of the family, important to learn from these lessons of life, from the proof that they gave in this life. Again, talk is cheap. Anybody can say, I believe. Anybody can say, I'm Catholic. Anybody can say, I love you. Talk is cheap. Talk means nothing. Words mean nothing. Nothing. It's important that the proof is there. And ultimately, that is the proof that God determines at our judgment. How have we proven this to be lived out as opposed to a joke? And so I would challenge you, as I do at all funerals, if you've forgotten many of these things, if you've stored up treasures on earth and that's become your life goal, if you think joy comes from winning and being first all the time, you might want to consider a different way. You might want to consider coming more often than Christmas and Easter. You might want to kind of look at things differently and not just pop your kids into Catholic school and hope for the best. You might want to come back home, and this is our spiritual home that then prepares us for our eternal home. Because if we keep proving to ourselves that we believe, that is part of proof that we understand these things and that we aren't depending on the here, but on the there. If you understand these things, then today is a sad day, obviously, but it's also a joy-filled day because the Bible describes where he is as a place of peace and joy and timelessness, and one day we're called to be with him in heaven. So here we have a funeral mass. There, a celebration, happy to see him. Here, goodbye. There, hello, a welcoming. Here, tears of sorrow, rightfully so. It is a loss to the family. But there, tears of joy, happy to see him. Make sure that you prove to God that you believe by on this day seeing with both sets of eyes. The sad part here, the joyful part there. If you do this, well, then you prove to God that you get it. If today is only sad, terrible, and miserable, well, then you're not seeing with both sets of eyes. We have to see with both sets of eyes, especially on a day like this. That's the test. Can you see the sad and the joy-filled? Can you see the goodbye? Can you see the welcoming that's going on the other side? You have to see with both sets of eyes on a day like this. Then you prove to God that you get it. That's how you prove to God that you understand the power of the resurrection, the power of his love, the power of the proof that Artur gave to the family throughout his life. That is the goal that we have in this life, to prove to God that we believe. Please stand for the prayer of the faithful.